Welcome to Connected Conversations. I'm your host, Adriane Handy. Today begins a 5-part mini-series on immigration. Before we begin, I want to make something very clear. This is not a series about politics, and it's truly not meant to start a debate. This is a true story about a real person, someone I've personally known for 20 years, someone you could easily know in your own community. I found out about my friend when his wife reached out to tell me he had been detained by ICE. I 100% wanted to believe it was a joke, but her face told me the whole story without words. I could feel the stress of not knowing what was next or how long it would be. The separation was weighing heavy on her. Her whole energy was sitting in uncertainty. Once he was released, I went to speak to him face-to-face to see the effects being detained had on his mind, body, and his spirit. This is his story. But I won't be telling it from his perspective. I will tell it from my perspective, from seeing, hearing, feeling the energy while he shared his lived experience. My friend is someone who woke up each day, went to work, cared for their family, paid bills, made plans, and worried about the ordinary things in life, the same way most of us do. And for a long time, their life moved quietly alongside everyone else's. And that's where I want to start. Not with what went wrong. Not with laws or opinions, but with who this person was before anything changed. Because when stories begin at the breaking point, we miss something important. We miss the life that existed before it. We miss the normalcy. We miss the humanity. So I'm sharing this story because I took the time to sit with it, to listen, not to just what happened, but what existed before it happened. Some stories don't need to be explained in full graphic detail. They simply ask to be told carefully and honestly. So there's nothing I need you to agree with here. All I ask is that you listen. Listen the way you would if this were someone you knew, your friend, your neighbor, your coworker. This is how their life looked before the line was crossed. Before anything changed, this person was living a life that would feel familiar to most of us. They worked, they showed up, they carried real-life responsibilities. There were routines, early mornings, long work days, evenings with family. A business was built with integrity. It was consistent life, and there was pride in that consistency. They were someone others relied on, not because they asked to be, but because they were dependable. Bills were paid, commitments were honored, a life built slowly, piece by piece. They weren't hiding, they weren't running, they were living here legally, participating fully in the rhythms of family, work, and community. They were living the American dream their parents came here for. They built a thriving family business. They raised a family. They contributed to their community. And they took pride in being part of this country, in what makes it, in what represents and makes things possible. And friends, that matters. Because when disruption comes later, it doesn't interrupt chaos. It interrupts continuity. It interrupts a life that was already in motion. There were people woven into that life. Family who depend on them. Employees who looked up to them for leadership. Clients who trusted their word. Not everything was perfect. There were stresses, disagreements, moments of fatigue, but there was also stability. Meals shared, conversations between friends, the quiet comfort of knowing who would be there tomorrow. Responsibility wasn't abstract. It lived in his daily life and in the lives of others around him. And that kind of responsibility shapes a person. It creates care, awareness, a steady way of moving through the world. This matters later because disruption never affects just one person. One thing that stood out when I listened to this story was how little this person thought about labels. Immigration status wasn't how they defined themselves. He was here legally, renewing his residency every 10 years without issue, just living a normal life. He wasn't waking up thinking about paperwork. He was thinking about schedules, family needs, what needed to be handled next. His identity lived in what he did. And when someone's identity is rooted in contribution, they feel like they belong. Not because they're told they do, but because their life functions as if they do. Before everything changed, this person wasn't a category. He was a presence. And presence is harder to erase than a label, which is why systems often rely on labels first. Before the rupture, there was a sense of safety. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but enough. Enough to plan. Enough to assume. Enough to assume tomorrow would look similar to today. Enough to believe that if you worked hard and followed the rules, life would continue to unfold. Most of us live this way. We don't call it safety, we call it normal. And it's only when that normal is disrupted that we realize how much we relied on it. When I asked about the day before everything changed, there was nothing out of the ordinary about it. No warning, no sense that anything was about to shift. It was just another day. They were returning home from visiting his country of origin with his wife, something they had done many times over the last 40 years. And that's how disruption often arrives. Not loudly, not with an announcement, but quietly, through an ordinary moment that later carries weight. At the airport checking in for their flight home, there was no reason to think this day would be any different from the others. And that's truly what makes it matter now. So this is where we pause the story. Not because it ends, but because this is the last moment before everything changes. Because once that line is crossed, even if life does continue, nothing is quite the same. In the next episode, we step into the moment where everything stopped. Not with drama, not with conclusions, just with honesty from a human perspective. For now, a life in motion, a future assumed, and no indication yet of what was coming. Thank you for listening with care. It matters more than you realize.